Hi guys. This is going to be a response to the conversation that's been going on in the Starcraft community recently about language and the appropriateness of using certain words during broadcasting or streaming or anything like that. Um, I am a relative nobody. My name's David. I'm a diamond level Starcraft player. I love the game. I love the community. I'm really into it. I watch streams all the time. Um, I just I'm way into it. Um, and so seeing this discussion crop up has got me thinking a lot. So mainly, I've come into this through the thread on Reddit where Destiny invited people onto the stream to talk about this, and I've also seen State of the Games where they're talking about this, and it's just sort of in the general discourse right now that this language thing is kind of a hot button issue. Um, so I want to do a few things. I want to just sort of set out some ideas for you to consider because I sense intelligence in the StarCraft community at large. For the most part, there's always the other guys, but I do think that the people who I'm talking to here are hopefully open-minded enough and hopefully willing to take a look at some things that I don't think we're currently taking a look at. And people have said it in comments, but I don't think they're really being given the attention that they deserve. Um, I want to say that I agree with Destiny on certain aspects of his arguments, and to be honest, it's the ones that he's most vocal about. So I don't want this to sound like I'm trying to trash any one person's opinion. I'm just trying to talk about language, how we use language as gamers, kind of as a whole. Yeah. I wrote down a bunch of stuff, like kind of like 10 pages of stuff about this, and trying to read from that would just be awful. I write uh, very wordy when I write, and it just wouldn't come out right trying to read it. What comes off as eloquence on the page would come off as me being a windbag. I want to point out that I almost just swore there, and I will. Don't worry. Okay, so introductions, all that stuff out of the way. Here we go. Um, I want to talk about what sort of things I'm going to argue here. For one thing, I'm going to sort of confirm and support Destiny's saying, or sort of, well, the thing that he posted disagreed with these 4 bullet points, and I agree with most of them, so I'm going to support those. But then I also want to argue a few other things that I don't think have entered into discussion the way they should at this point. Um, First thing, words can cause harm. I'm going to argue that. Second thing, there's a huge difference between swears like fuck, shit, etc., and words that really do have harmful effects on people. Like there's a big difference between offending someone's sense of propriety and causing them physiological distress because of psychological processes. So I'm going to talk about that. I'm going to talk about perspectivism, which is a philosophical thing. You don't have to get into it or really know anything about it, but how it's relevant to this sort of attitude that I see a lot of people having in these comments, and that I think Destiny himself has expressed, of I mean what I say one way, and y'all are taking it some other way. So that's your thing. I don't need to worry about what how you're construing my words. I'm going to talk about that a little bit and how it's pretty ignorant of the perspectives that are in play. And then I'm going to talk about compassion and whether or not that's something we value. And if it is, then a lot of the views that are being expressed are not consistent. And if it's not, that's okay too. And then I guess just sort of talk about the why we got started talking about this in the first place. Starcraft, video games, gaming, lingo, what's okay, what isn't, that kind of thing. Yeah. So I'm going to start actually getting into this because I'm 5 minutes in, and all I've been doing is just prefacing. So right into it. So the first thing I have on my little list here is words can cause harm. This is true. The whole phrase "sticks and stones can break my bones, but words will never hurt me." That's obsolete. It comes from a different time. It comes from a time when sort of culture at large was not really sensitive to the internal lives that we live as people. Um, it's just not. I mean, you can choose not to listen to psychologists, but the people studying this are completely certain that um, trauma victims can have either memories or just physiological distress from that trauma triggered by words related to that trauma. Um, and on the same note, in terms of like racial slurs or sexual slurs or anything like that, the emotional charge within those words that can cause harm. And I actually had something written here that I am going to just read out um, to sort of make this analogy clear to you, okay? And you don't have to take my word for it. You can go research this stuff if you're really invested in this argument. But take it from me, this is true, as far as I can see. Okay, when an individual experiences trauma, it's like a bone breaks somewhere in their psyche. This bone can heal and become even stronger than it was before the break. However, most psychological traumas don't receive the same care as a physical broken bone, and so these remain a weak point in that person's mental defenses. When something hits that weak spot, it can cause a lot of distress and pain for that person. So imagine if we're using psychological trauma sort of equals like the school equal broken bones. So my arm is broken here, okay? Broken. I'm walking around with my cast on, okay? It doesn't really bother me, just walking around, whatever. And then someone comes up and punches me in the cast. That's a problem, okay? Yes, that's a problem. I think we can all agree that punching someone in their cast is just kind of messed up. So in the same way, and this is the example that a lot of people have been using, telling a former rape victim, I don't know why I have two former in there, a rape victim whose psychological broken bone hasn't healed properly, so they're still in their cast. And the truth about psychological damage is that it can take a lot longer to heal than a bone. So someone's walking around still with their mental cast, I guess. I'm getting funny images about that. And saying, you raped them, say you're playing them in an online game or whatever, and you killed them or whatever. It's, oh, I totally raped you. That can have the proportionally same effect as hitting someone in their cast. It's probably not going to kill them. There are instances where victims of verbal abuse have been driven to suicide and other stuff, but probably won't kill them. But it will hurt them. And I know I sound like such a weenie saying this, but it's true. Psychological harm is harm nonetheless. Okay, it is. And I think we can all just, I know I'm talking to a lot of guys mostly. I think we can all just sort of drop the bravado and say, yeah, okay, people can be harmed psychologically. If you don't agree with me on that, that's one of the sort of bases for a lot of the other stuff I'm saying, so you can just click pause or tab out or whatever, and that's fine. But I hope that most of you will agree that, I mean, you may not have experienced it, and you're totally lucky if that's the case, but I have, and you probably know someone who has been just truly hurt by something non-physical. It happens, okay? It just does. This analogy only goes so far, and it's really thin as you relate it to casting and streaming and stuff, because these words probably aren't directed at the victim, So it's not like Destiny when he talks about banelings raping Marines while Zerglings hold the waist. That's a pretty explicit rape analogy, okay? But he's not saying that to a rape victim. So it's not like going up and punching someone in their cast. What it is like, though, because of the way language works and sound and our, the way we perceive and receive language, the way it does work is it's like swinging a chain around a room when you speak. And it might, maybe most people will just get grazed, it'll hit them and it does nothing. But maybe it hits someone in that weak spot and causes some serious problems. Um, and I just say swing on the chain because it's an easy, concrete example. I'm sure the intent is not as malicious as that, swinging something heavy around. Anyway, so it's not as direct. I get that. And there's a lot of arguments about, like, people who are getting offended by that shouldn't be offended, or I'm using it in a different context. Okay, let's talk about that. I want to talk about that. So what I've been actually had a quote from someone on the Reddit thread here. Okay, so someone's arguing one point, and somebody says, "quote Not to be disrespectful, but just the fact that you're a member of a minority doesn't mean that any use of a word that used to be a slur, I don't know why I'm pronouncing it that way, is now offensive to you. As Destiny says, it's your job to correctly interpret the message of the communicator and not to misconstrue it." End quote. That point of view, I've heard it a lot, or read it a lot, from people on the internet, sort of looking into this whole dialogue, and that seems to be the point of view of Destiny himself. And again, Destiny's sort of made himself as the lightning rod. He wants to be an advocate for this this position he's forwarding, so he's going to be the example. Sorry, dude. That argument is based in so much ignorance, okay? First of all, I want to talk about the difference between offense and hurt. I already sort of did that at the beginning. You can be offended, and a lot of people have been linking to this comic who's like, "You're offended, so fucking what? I don't care." And yeah, that's pretty much how it is. If you are just sort of like, "Blah, blah, blah, shouldn't be saying that," it's sort of, it's improper to say that, whatever, okay? That isn't worth much consideration, unless it's, like, important for some other reason, like it's your job or something. But you know what? People who do have that much of a sense of propriety probably have a stick up their butt anyway, so I don't care so much. However, as I was just talking about, words can cause serious psychological harm. So we're not talking about just, "Oh, I'm so offended that you said that. Oh my god." It's not that. It's, "Holy fuck, I feel ridiculously awful right now because I just heard someone say that." That's what we're talking about. And it's easier to say offended when that's what we mean. And I say we, it's not me, I'm not saying that. Anyway, so, secondly, related to this argument here of it's your job to interpret the communicator correctly, that's so arrogant and ignorant. It really is. Let me go off track a little bit here and talk about perspectivism, okay? Let me go to my little text thing here. Okay, the upshot is every person approaches the world through a certain perspective. It's unique to each individual, and it gets shaped by a person's experiences, their memories, their internal psychological landscape, and so on. It's like everyone sees the world through a pair of glasses, and everyone's pair of glasses has like a different tint to it. That's true. Okay, everybody's experiences have created like and this is, I'm pretty sure in neuroscience they've actually like proven this. There are like connections between certain memories and other things, and those connections are, first of all, so complex. Second of all, different for everybody. There might be, some things that are similar for most people, but, on the whole, they're pretty much unique. It's not necessary. Like, I'm not telling you. Some people are, but I don't agree with them. It's not necessary to respect other people's perspectives. but a lot of people think it's a nice thing to do. Again, a lot of people will say it's a moral imperative. Again, I don't agree with that. Um, but I don't think that anyone of a certain level of intelligence and sensitivity can help but consider, at least, the perspectives of other people, the fact that they do have those perspectives. Um, and from here, it doesn't take a lot of imagination to understand how these perspectives can include the association of certain words being harmful, or not even the association, the fact that given where somebody is coming from, a word can be like a punch in the cast, even if it's not intended as such. Um, and if you don't, if you are unwilling to recognize that perspective, or you lack the perspective altogether, those were out of order. But if you choose to disregard people's perspective, that's a different thing. I'll talk about that later. But if you're ignorant of it, telling people of different perspectives what they should and shouldn't do, or should be able to do and should not be able to do, is just ridiculous. Okay, take a person. I don't know if anyone I'm talking to has this problem. Say someone has a thing about failure, Idra. Uh, say someone can't stand losing. Okay, they when they lose, it makes them feel so awful, and they hate it so much. That's part of the way that they operate in the world, and it affects a lot. And that's part of their perspective. In the same way, a gay man who, in his youth, when he was just sort of figuring out that he was gay and stuff, saw or heard about people like lynching a gay person somewhere. I remember that happened. I don't remember the details. Heard about that and heard, they were calling him stuff like faggot and just using it violently. That creates the same association and the same way of operating in the world, whether they are conscious of it or not. When they hear that word, especially used aggressively, it's going to create that same reaction as Idra probably gets. Sorry, man, I'm not. It's just the example that came to mind. When there's a losing situation, it's just this awful internal feeling. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, good for you. I'm happy for you. I really, really am. But unless you just are fine being ignorant and are fine being completely insensitive, I'm not expecting people to be like, as much of a weenie as me. But unless you're willing to be completely ignorant and completely insensitive, you can't ignore the fact that A, other people have these perspectives, and B, that you probably don't know what it's like. And therefore, you can't really talk about what what they can do. So people say about Idra, I really didn't mean to use an example. He should just not get so mad when he loses. Why does he do that? That's stupid. It's part of his perspective, okay? And yeah, it might be illogical. It might be silly from some people's perspective. It might even cause him badness in the real world. He GG'd out of a game early that he could have won. He might have done better at MLG Columbus. Okay. But you know what? That's how he works, and barring significant psychological work, it's pretty hard to change that. Okay, so I've gone really deep into that, and it's time to get back out a little bit. This is so long. I don't know if YouTube likes videos this long. We'll have to see. I'll probably have to split it into parts. Okay. So that's kind of the broader stuff, okay? Well, no, it's not, because Destiny's points are kind of broad, too. Let me actually just bring up the Reddit post. Here we go. Okay. So, in his post, Destiny says he wants to dispel some of the rather ignorant ideas revolving around the concept of offensive speech. Namely, and he lists these 4 things, so I'm going to go through these. Now remember, Destiny is against these phrases, and I'm going to evaluate them. People who swear frequently are stupid. No, not true. Destiny doesn't think that's true. I don't think that's true. Um, Swearing often can be a marker for someone being an idiot, but it isn't necessary. It's that whole correlation doesn't equal causation, something like that. A lot of stupid people swear all the time. However, a lot of really smart people swear a lot too. And so there's no, you can't say that that connection is absolute, okay? People who swear frequently, they're just stupid. No. Destiny has a lot of views about this, about swear words in particular, being more effective at expressing a given emotion or intent than other words. And so it's the only logical or intelligent thing to do to use those words. And to an extent, I kind of agree with that. Um, yeah, I mean, there earlier, right at like the beginning of the video, you can go back. It was like 1 minute. Um, I almost said fucking for something because it was just there. It was part of the vocabulary. It expressed what I wanted to say. Does that mean I'm, an idiot? No, doesn't mean that. So anyway, I think that one's pretty clear. People who use certain words, regardless of context, are racist. No, doesn't make them racist. It does make them insensitive, ignorant, etc. Okay. Um, Somebody can say, I'm I'm totally uncomfortable saying the N word, and I'm even faggot. It makes me feel physically icky to say those words. So I'm gonna say N word again. Forgive my leaniness. It's not about political correctness. It really is just about that physiological response for me. I don't like saying it, so I'm not going to. So if somebody says the N word casually to their friends, whatever, does that automatically mean they're a racist? No, that's stupid. That's really stupid. However, um, with a lot of words, such as the N word, the F word, the other F word, the 6 letter one, I held up 8 fingers. Um, there are so many perspectival issues related to that I was just talking about, so I'm not going to rehash it all. And being ignorant of those, yeah, it makes you ignorant, insensitive, not stupid, but or not racist, but it does have some connotations, but not that one. Okay, it doesn't automatically equal racism or homophobia. It just means there's sort of a lack of understanding going on there. 3. Certain words cause us to become insensitive to certain actions. I'm not comfortable going one way or the other on this because I know there's a lot of studies and research um, about this, and I don't know if they've been conclusive. And to be honest, I'm not really sure myself what sort of opinion I've formed on that. However, I think it's completely possible for somebody who is aware and examining, what they're doing and what they're talking about, so just reasonably self-aware, to use a word all the time and not cause you to become insensitive. However, I do think that the increased usage in a certain way does reduce sensitivity about it. So when I was in middle school, everyone was calling everyone else a faggot. It was just the thing, you know, and it was just a blanket insult. Okay, it meant you're stupid. Um, and those that propagated. Okay, those people still use that word today, and are they insensitive to? Well, this says actions. So does that mean they're insensitive to the lynching of a gay man? Probably not. Um, I do think that they're insensitive to the stuff that I've been talking about, such as the potential harm that language can cause. But in terms of actions, I have to go by the wording there. Probably not. Okay. People should strive to avoid using any word that could be deemed offensive. Any is there in quotes. I think it's supposed to be emphasis. No, of course not. That's stupid. And again, that comes down to the difference between offending someone's propriety and doing them actual harm. So again, if there's some stuff you got, I shouldn't say that. That offends me. Fuck them. That's stupid. But people should strive, and this this is what I believe. You don't have to believe it. People should strive to do the best thinking they can, and from that thinking, do the best action they can. And so, I think it's just bad thinking to use words that can cause harm indiscriminately, just without any care. I just think that's, I don't know. I I've already told the whole story. I don't need to tell it again. But so should they strive to avoid using any word that could ever be deemed offensive? Ever? No, come on, you can't. I'm not down with blanket censorship. And actually, I wrote something on this, so I am wrapping this up. This is pretty close to the end of it here, I think. Blanket censorship. Oh. Okay. Right. Okay. Blanket censorship or self-editing or political correctness is stupid. It's absolutely up to any individual person to choose what words to say, but that does mean that the decision and the consequences lay squarely on their own shoulders. And if you're educated and intelligent enough to make your own decisions about what words to use, if you're intelligent enough to have a problem with people saying you shouldn't say fuck, then you're intelligent enough to understand the effects of other words that people tell you not to say, like the N-word. Just like anyone making a powerful, I am reading off script here, just like anyone making a powerful oratory chooses certain words because they know the different shades of meanings behind those words, the different implications they have. It's wrong reading. Just like anyone who's making a speech knows exactly what they're saying and why they're saying it. People claiming to be using certain language, such as offensive language, because there's some principle they're supporting, or for some effect, they're certainly smart enough to understand the nuances for their lexicon. Sorry I fucked that up. That would have been cool. It was a cool paragraph, but I messed it up. Okay, so what I've essentially tried to establish here is that words can cause harm. Being insensitive to that harm kind of sucks. It's not the end of the world, but just in people, it's not the best thing in the world, not the worst. They're not an axe murderer, but expressing ignorance and insensitivity about these issues, I don't know. I mean, I think it reflects bad thinking, I guess, is what I'm saying. And if you want to say bad by whose standards, mine, I guess. But I do think that in philosophy there is precedence for establishing good versus bad thinking, at least to some extent, maybe not absolutely. Okay, sorry. Ignorance and insensitivity reflect bad thinking, and a lack of understanding or sensitivity to others' perspectives other than your own. That just seems clear to me, and I've tried to make it clear to you over the past half hour. If you're still watching, you're a goddamn champion. I'm still talking and my voice hurts. This mostly became about language use as human beings, when it's so off topic, I guess. But in terms of Starcraft, briefly, if you're a role model in any capacity, if you have, as Destiny does, like 20,000 people watching your stream at any given time, you're influencing those people. You just are. It's just, you are. And you don't have to edit yourself because you're influencing people. But not to be aware of the influence and to just sort of foist the responsibility off by saying, let them interpret it how they will. Well, it's ignorant and insensitive, the two words I've been saying this whole thing. And I think it reflects bad thinking. In terms of professionalism, there was this whole other argument, but you know what? That's something completely different than what I've been talking about, and maybe that should have been the theme if I wanted this to be a Starcraft community thing. But you know, I think the other issue is more important. Um, I'm not even going to go into the professionalism thing because it would take too much time, and my voice is giving out. Guys, from the bottom of my heart, I love the Starcraft community. Um, I think I don't think I've even met anyone that I would call a community member in person, but just the sense that I get is that it's a joyful, like-minded to me set of people, and I don't mean like-minded in the sense of opinions, but just in terms of the way our minds operate. I don't really know, but gamers, it's a family thing, and I love it. And when I see people that I love using this language and displaying this ignorance and insensitivity, it just bums me out. It does. And I have this issue. I'm in a band. I have this issue with my bandmates all the time because all three of them, other than me, there's four of us, three of them, they say that shit all the time. And they know I don't like it, and they continue doing it anyway. I've told them to continue doing it anyway because I don't want to, come down on them or keep them from being who they are. But it bums me out because it lets me know that there's some bad thinking going on in there, and they're either not smart enough. I don't think that's true. I know my bandmates are smart. Either not smart enough or not sensitive enough or just not willing to do the mental work that it takes to be aware of this stuff, to be sensitive to it, and to make the decision for themselves. And again, the decision is up to you. If you hear all this stuff and you're like, yeah, okay, but I still don't think it's worth editing yourself to avoid causing other people psychological harm, you can make that decision for sure. And I think Destiny does because I think he understands all this stuff. But if you do that work and you have that understanding, then there's just going to be this gap between you and the people who support that sensitivity and compassion. And this comes up all the time. Well, not all the time, but it's sort of the bottom line in the fight between in philosophy, sort of morality that supports selflessness and egoism. You just come down to a point where you don't agree. You just don't agree, and that happens. And if that's the case, then we probably just part ways and say, okay, respect to you. Aside from this, I think it's the wrong way to go, but agree to disagree. But I think that not having the awareness and the sensitivity, etc., is not the right way to go. Guys, if you listen to all of this, thank you so much. GLHF. For the sake of transparency, I'm Marcuse, character code 671, MARCEUSE. Blame me if you want, or flame me through in-game chat. I don't care. If you want to talk more about it, get at me through in-game or whatever you see this on. I guess I've talked so much. I have to stop talking, or I'll never stop. Thank you for listening. I hope I helped. Bye.